So hey anime fans, the series name is What If Naruto Got Harem with Incredible, so let's start the series. A miserable grin crawled across an elderly person's face as he pondered what he planned to do. It had just been a month prior now that Jiraiya had learned about the ascent of another gathering who intended to assume control over the world. They called themselves the Akatsuki and they anticipated assembling all the Jinchuriki and involving their power for something that Jiraiya didn't yet have any idea. Nevertheless, being the brave man he promptly went to figuring out how to prevent these despicable men from accomplishing their objectives. He was glad to say that he had found an answer as a seal he had found while looking through the vestiges of Yuzu no Kuni. This specific seal had the option to send an item or individual to another aspect, presently clearly on account of a human. Jiraiya had not a chance of realizing what might occur on the overside, nor where anybody would wind up, in the event that they may do in any case. One way or the other, by the day's end the necessities of the many offset the requirements of a solitary kid. Yes, he planned to utilize this specific jutsu on a youthful Naruto who had as of late accomplished the position of genin by acquiring the utilization of shadow clones, very much an accomplishment. Taking everything into account, however, it seemed it would all be for nothing for this situation. Presently some of you might be thinking, how should Jiraiya do this to an honest kid, or, how is it that he could do this to his own godson? Yet the response is straightforward. Naruto's life had been a crap one, to lay it out plainly, and regardless of what the little fellow did later on, Jiraiya realized beyond any doubt that the youngster would be everlastingly decided for what he was. It was a direct result of this reality that Jiraiya had the option to do this with a reasonable inner voice as he considered as allowing the kid a second opportunity at life, one not loaded up with such a lot of agony and dejection that he scarcely understood what the word embrace implied. No, in the event that anything, Jiraiya saw it as a thoughtful gesture to his godson that he would get an opportunity no other human penance had previously. It was in view of this felt that Jiraiya crawled behind the orange-clad 12-year-old while in his straightforward getaway strategy just to be extra certain. He was happy he did when he saw exactly what level the kid was preparing at. It was currently clear to the old sage that Naruto had been involving a ninja's most significant device for presumably most of his life, trickery. How the blondie figured out how to deceive his teacher and the third Hokage was past Jiraiya, yet in a manner he was somewhat pleased that his godson was so capable to endeavor high chunin to low jonin level chakra control procedures, yet he immediately cleaned that pride away as he had never really merited it. He'd passed on the kid to fight for himself in a town brimming with disdain since he was unable to get it together of his indecencies. In any case, he would set things right for that now as he surprised the clueless pre-youngster, his shock sore anyway. However, similarly as he might have been playing out the strike that would take the kid out, he saw a slight jerk in the young man's shoulder letting him know the kid had really figured out how to identify him while he was undetectable. The kid would have proceeded to become perfect. Jiraiya chose, yet tragically that wouldn't be the case this time, yet perhaps in this new world. Getting the kid as he fell in reverse, he paid heed to a lot of smoke ascending out from the encompassing woods. Odd, he thought as he was unable to smell a fire. Choosing to let the matter be, he had something important to take care of, all things considered. He set about removing the kid from the town and away from any inquisitive eyes, while reviling to himself about how extraordinarily simple this was for him to do. He must have a few words with his teacher after this was finished and cleaned. When he was a decent little while outside the town, he tracked down a cavern and started to review the seal on the floor prior to drying it with his chakra, and set the kid in the middle resting with his face gazing toward the top of the cavern. The following thing he did was put a couple of looks on the kid's body that must be opened with his blood. These parchments would make sense of all that the kid had the right to be familiar with his legacy as well as his dad's #1 jutsus among a couple of others that Jiraiya chose to include to assist his godson on his outing to adulthood, as well as marked issues of every one of his books. Hello, he needed to give Naruto a pleasant little memory, and the opportunity to spread his unreasonable manifestations to another aspect was only for the elderly person. Everything to the side Jiraiya was currently full ready to start the seal that would send his godson to ideally a superior life in another aspect while simultaneously saving the basic countries from the danger of the Akatsuki. Indeed, Jiraiya would now forfeit one to save the existences of many. Gradually the frog sage's chakra ran all through the seal as the dull cavern before long became lit with a wide orchestrate of varieties as Jiraiya before long ended up battling with the sheer measure of chakra need for this method to work. He wouldn't surrender anyway as he siphoned all that he had into the seal as the light show it was delivering turned out to be increasingly serious. Naruto's body started to falter directly before Jiraiya's eyes, all through presence. Soon the light show turned out to be strong to the point that Jiraiya had to shut his eyes as he keeps siphoning chakra into the seal. A blast before long went off that shook the cavern, however it figured out how to remain solid, which Jiraiya was everlastingly grateful for as he contemplated internally that perhaps he hadn't thoroughly considered things enough. Yet again anyway when the elderly person opened his eyes he was glad to see that Naruto's body was gone similarly as the seal was. Following a couple of additional minutes of rest he set out to arrive at Konoha to tell his master about what he had recently finished. In the interim, Naruto had awakened to wind up in what at this point was an exceptionally natural sewer while pondering who on earth had the option to creep up and take him out, not to mention send him here. Everything being equal, approaching the bars before him he called out, "Yo, Fluffball, what in the world's going on?" In a scrutinizing, assuming marginally ticked-off manner of speaking, spread the word that Naruto was not the kind of fellow who jumped at the chance to be screwed around. No, he passed on that to the man in the pink kimono. The blondie was replied by a thunder of rebellion from behind the bars before a fox head the size of a mountain unexpectedly shot out of the murkiness with a threatening catch at the little kid before it. "You would try to converse with the Lord of all devils in such a tone. I ought to tear your throat out." In the event that Naruto was staged anyway, he sure didn't show it as he simply smiled back at the evil presence before him before he answered in a deadpan tone, "Most importantly, we both know that you're not so much as an evil spirit, not to mention the lord of them. You are only a hunk of chakra focused together to shape an aggro fox who believes he's all that. Second of all, we both know that regardless of whether you were to attempt to kill me, the seal could without a doubt forestall it. Presently, exactly what is befalling me that fixed things such that I should have been here." Kyuubi or Kurama, as Naruto realized him as, growled at the aggro fox remark before full-on frowning when he heard the inquiry being posed. "Apparently your alleged guardian had gotten back to the town just to take you out, take you to a cavern approximately an hour or so beyond Konoha, where he at long last started laying you on top of an old Uzumaki seal with a letter from your mom and father alongside your legitimate treasures and a couple of jutsus and methods. He then, at that point, concluded like a nitwit he would enact the seal trying to send us to an alternate aspect." Naruto then, at that point, examined detachment cross his face before he asked Kurama in a marginally confident tone, "And did it work?" Kurama just grunted in entertainment yet chose to help the second human he had at any point regarded, with the first being the Hagoromo, also called the Sage of Six Ways. "Indeed, it worked, however in doing so it accomplished something that even I was unable to foresee. The sheer powers following up on your body was a lot for it to deal with, and before I could figure out how to do anything it had as of now seriously harm your chakra pathways, truly intending that while you can in any case involve it for taijutsu, like Stone Lee, you will not have the option to involve it for any jutsu beyond a periodic feeble E or perhaps D-rank jutsu yet, and still, at the end of the day it is hazardous." The nine-followed chakra monster let that a little before he went on at Naruto's gesture. "Presently typically I could just shot a portion of my chakra through, however sadly for us to try and endure I needed to have virtually all of my power took from me, as I currently just have enough to get by, like some normal regular citizen." Sigh. yet I figured out how to give you one thing before I lost all my power. Now that stood out as he currently settled up on it completely towards what the not-so-monster mass of chakra was sharing with him. Kurama by and by permitted a grin to move across his elements as he let the quiet proceed just to demonstrate hatred for the kid prior to proceeding again when he was certain the still marginally immature kid lost it totally. I figured out how to provide you with a kind of Kekii Genkai that gives you command over all that to do with heat. What I mean by that will be that you have some control over the intensity around you. Whether it be at the glow of a bright day or the intensity of a liquid heater, you have some control over it through touch alone for however long it is hot, and who knows, perhaps in the future once you acquire control you could possibly send it out in waves. Kurama presently smiled at the reaction he was getting. It had been damn difficult to concoct that on the fly, and he needed to concede he was really glad for it himself and knew that on the off chance that Naruto prepared with it even half however much he did with Jutsu in Konoha, then he would go far in this new world regardless of how strong individuals there were. Gee, so I'm essentially something contrary to an Iceman, huh? Asked Naruto. Kurama only looked baffled briefly before he answered. I surmise thus. However, I don't have any idea what that is have to do with anything. Naruto essentially shrugged before he expressed. I don't realize, I just got an unusual inclination that I'll annoy a snowman in the not-so-distant future. This equitable befuddled Kurama further before he at last concluded that it was alright for Naruto to return to his body. So he did, just to awaken in a genuine sewer where the water truly could smudge his dress. Of all the karma. After a speedy dismiss, Naruto started to go for a stepping stool away from there, and when he got to the top and opened the metal plate he could express single word: unimaginable. Before the blondie stood metal-like structures that each stood higher than the Hokage Tower. As he mixed out of the sewer opening he got a couple of odd looks before individuals encompassing him just kept on approaching their days. He presently remained on what by the vibes of it was some kind of pathway that was made from comparable stuff to the structures around him. Setting the plate back where it should have been, he second-guessed himself on what to do next before he heard a recognizable growling voice tear through his psyche. Track down a library or spot of learning, and find out about this new world that we are in. Calculating the plan to have merit, he chose to pay attention to the fox's directions for once before he set about attempting to find a position of learning. It ended up being a troublesome undertaking anyway, as Naruto found himself unfit to peruse any signs, and at whatever point he would attempt to ask somebody they would simply not focus, or in some cases gaze at me like I was communicating in something else altogether or something like that. That was until Naruto accidentally strolled into somebody in a hurry, which caused the two of them to fall over. When Naruto looked into, he saw somebody who helped him to remember what certain individuals in the town concealed in the mists should seem to be. He remained at around 6 foot tall, was totally bare with brown complexion. The man wore a dim turtleneck long sleeve sweater which was generally covered by an earthy colored cowhide coat. For pants he wore long dark dress jeans that fell onto dark calfskin pointed shoes. To Naruto, this man's garments looked bad. However, taking into account what every other person was wearing, and his own ongoing arrangement of garments, he was ready to allow that to go unnoticed and not set forth his own viewpoint. At the point when the two got up, the two of them gazed at one another briefly before the person of color made some noise. Yo! I would for the most part begin hollering about what on God's green earth you were taking a gander at, yet seeing your ongoing clothing and condition of dress, no doubt I won't annoy, need some assistance. He just got a clear gaze anyway from the blonde kid before Naruto chose to voice his own viewpoints. Communicate in a language I can grasp. Elderly person. He was left shocked, and the elderly person got a ticked-off look all over before he started talking back to him in his own language. Yet again, elderly person, I'm 32 years of age. How on earth is that elderly person? Presently, by and large, this would make Naruto concoct another scornful comment, yet he let it slide as he truly expected to find out about this world, and right now this elderly person was the main source he had. so he started with his inquiries. How might you comprehend and nitpick me when no other person can? He chose to begin with the fundamentals. The man before him appeared to hush briefly, a simple sign for Naruto to tell that he would have rather not come clean with the kid. I learned Japanese in school, was his answer. Naruto just chose to put on an act for the present by gesturing his head in understanding, while at the same time feeling staggering fortunate to find that his home's language existed in an alternate aspect too. Naruto then requested bearings to the closest learning office and was shocked, and the man proposed to give him bearings as well as show him the way there, as clearly he was traveling that way too. On the way there the two talked and got to know one another better while both just parting with the required data about themselves. Naruto concluded he loved this man as despite the fact that he was a non-military personnel, and Naruto is as yet ready to detect chakra in others. He knew not to offer everything to an outsider. Still, Naruto had the option to suspect that he had a spouse named Kana and they lived in a loft someplace which was evidently genuinely pleasant. He likewise scholarly, his name was Lucius Best and he loved winter sports, for example, skiing and snowboarding, and his dearest companion was a person named Sway. Naruto thus let Lucius know his most memorable name and that he was a vagrant whose preferences comprised of cultivating, tricks, and learning new things, which was the reason he was attempting to track down a learning office. The two before long showed up at the greatest library he had at any point seen, which, considering the reality this was just the second one, he assumed was not really something fantastic. Still, he felt that 3 stories worth of books was quite huge. The two then, at that point, strolled in together before the two of them head to the counter to ask where the kinds of books they were searching for. Not understanding what the man requested drove him somewhat mad, and he chose to ask the one who had carried him to the library to ask the secretary where he could track down books to assist him with figuring out how to talk and write in English. Grinning, the man did exactly that, as Naruto currently got exceptionally dubious as he had never been dealt with this pleasantly. Not even that manipulative old jerk of a Hokage acted this pleasantly with him. Still, he would take what he could get, as he probably was aware this man had hardly any familiarity with what he contained, thus subsequently was able to help him. Still, he would maintain a watchful eye. Driving the kid to a part explicitly for learning new dialects, Lucius couldn't resist the opportunity to feel somewhat terrible at seeing exactly how cautious the vagrant kid was behind him, as he pondered exactly what kind of life the kid would have need to have lived. Still, he would help this kid. He concluded it at that moment that he would assist this kid with taking care of himself as though he was his own. He was certainly not an ex-superhuman in vain. Additionally, he detected something particularly amazing about this kid and needed to be a functioning job in his life. When they arrived at the segment Naruto was searching for, the blondie felt that Lucius would at long last pass on him to approach his own advantage, however was shocked again when he didn't. As a matter of fact, the man had proactively approached getting the right books before he went to a close by open PC before he changed his seat and motioned for Naruto to snatch a seat and sit close to him. Presently Naruto was significantly more dubious about the person of color, yet concluded that he would do as he recommended, though leisurely and cautiously. He had no question he could beat this man, however he would pass on nothing to amaze. Plunking down close to the man, he chose to be a smidgen more vocal with his interests as he inquired, "For what reason would you say you are doing this? What is it you need to acquire?" Lucius just gazed at the kid briefly, not exactly getting what he implied. However, at that point it clicked. When he got what the youngster was getting at, he quickly started waving his arms in a pacifying way before he made some noise and responded to the kid's inquiry. "I don't have anything to acquire from this, nothing by any means." Seeing reality behind his words through the man's eyes, he chose to trust him for the present, yet presently he had an alternate inquiry as a main priority. Then, at that point, why? The straightforward inquiry was sufficient to send Lucius for a spin as he started attempting to depict precisely why he was doing this, for he didn't totally have any acquaintance with himself. but he before long understood himself and responded to the blondie's question by saying, "I don't actually have the foggiest idea. At this point it's obvious that I see a youngster in a difficult situation who necessitates help that I am ready to give." In a snapshot of motivation, Lucius himself was dazzled with his words and started to consider another vocation on TV, before his air pocket was burst by Naruto's acknowledgement. For while he have no faith in the man, he would in any case involve him as an asset and be vigilant. In the event that the man had a go at anything, he would utilize all his ability to break out. It was hours after the fact that the two were tapped on the shoulder and told that the library was going to close. Becoming flushed a piece in humiliation, the two got up and left the structure. It appeared to be that the two had burned through the vast majority of the day there, as it was currently 5 p.m. and they had got there around 11 a.m. Naruto couldn't completely accept that he had spent such a long time with another person that didn't loathe his guts. Still, time was slipping away and he didn't have a spot to go for the evening. He started leaving, yet before he could get anything else than 2 stages he was come by Lucius, who shouted to him, "Furthermore, where do you believe you're going? Do you even have a rooftop for this evening?" At the shake of his head, Lucius truly felt for the kid, as was content with the choice he had made before. "Why don't you get back home with me?" Naruto just remained there slack-jawed for some time before he grew a sneer and inquired, "Furthermore, your spouse's thought process, bringing back a total more odd and a young man at that." Lucius faltered briefly prior to murmuring about unreasonable small children, before he by grinned at the kid before him. "This is my choice. What's more, what other place are you going to go?" With a resenting gesture, Naruto acknowledged that reality before he strolled back to the man and started following him to his new home, his new life. At the point when the two showed up at Lucius' condo, they were both shocked to think that it is unfilled and totally dull. Strolling around, the two saw that there appeared to be literally nothing different from when Lucius left. No note, no nothing, and Lucius was currently beginning to get somewhat stressed before they chosen to check the one room they hadn't, his and her room. Who knows, perhaps she had hit the sack, at 5:30, no doubt not likely. At the point when they opened the entryway, the two of them found a vacant bed, which made a flood of stress shot up Lucius' back before he saw with a touch of premonition the scented candles and flower petals that appeared to be hung around in irregular places. A flush was heard coming from the en-suite restroom before the entryway opened to uncover Kana in unmentionables before she burped, scratched her arse and strolled over to the extra-large bed before she even saw who was at the entryway. Naruto was currently stunned as he contemplated how fortunate the person remaining close to him was, who doesn't need a lady who knows how to burp. Still, the following scene make the blondie roll on the ground giggling as he saw the blood shoot out of Lucius' nose as he soared back out of the room. It appeared to be even this far into their relationship, he actually couldn't take a few to get back some composure over himself. Naruto thought, deviants exist in each aspect, and they are similarly as entertaining, before he started giggling once more, just to be taken out by a pissed-looking Kana. Awakening while at the same time keeping his eyes shut, Naruto started to utilize all his other sharpened faculties to get the smallest of developments close by. He immediately recollected the justification behind himself being taken out in any case and needed to fend off a sneer that took steps to develop across his face. That was the point at which he heard it. "What is it that you mean you believe should embrace him?" Naruto presently laid frozen in place as what Kana had recently said genuinely hit its imprint with him, and however much his faculties advised him to get the damnation out of there as quick as possible, his heart wouldn't permit it. Something in that frame of mind to keep him right where he was, and as of not long ago Naruto had consistently thought he had totally lost it, trust. The inclination was weird to Naruto on the grounds that despite the fact that he had a desire to become perfect concerning power, he had never at any point longed for having a genuine family. Unshed tears started to frame at its actual idea. A father who he could turn upward to and seek to become, and a mother to cause him to feel like he generally had a home to get back to. Not so boisterous, Kana, you could wake him, and I haven't even enlightened him yet, Lucius expressed in a murmured voice that made Naruto strain to hear what he had said. Naruto could feel the expectation starting to fill in his heart as a bizarre warm inclination appeared to spread around the blondie's body. Was this the way in which it felt to be needed, he pondered. What do you mean he doesn't have the foggiest idea yet? You brought him home for Christ's purpose, Kana murmured back in what sounded to Naruto like an irate tone. He simply believes we're giving him a rooftop for the evening. Other than I generally needed a child, and since you can't have one, for what reason don't we check this out? Lucius' words created turmoil in Naruto, however he continued to tune in and chose to harp on it later. That's what I know, and I've without exception needed to be a mother, yet it's simply so unexpected. Kana talked in a furious sulking voice prior to shudder marginally toward the end, or if nothing else that is what Naruto assembled before he felt a change in the bed he was laying in as Lucius drew in nearer to his significant other as he embraced her and started murmuring quieting words. Through this Naruto at long last begun to allow his brain to meander as he considered what this would mean for himself and asked himself commonly exactly the way in which open he ought to accompany his folks in the event that this situation remained valid. Would it be a good idea for him he educate them concerning his starting points? Stand by a moment. He had totally disregarded the parchments that old degenerate left him. He wouldn't consider him his backup parent. So in view of that he hung tight for some time until the two grown-ups had left, in addition 2 or 3 minutes before he woke him up to one of the rooms he had passed by while looking for Kana with Lucius. Naruto got it was a visitor room, deciding on the absence of anything inside. However, it was still miles better than anything he had at any point lived in, far superior to a trash canister at any rate. Sitting up he looked through his pockets and found 3 looks inside them. The first he selected was a red tome and had the image of the frogs on it. Opening it up by putting some of his blood on it because of Kurama, he saw that it was from the deviant recluse and quickly needed to discard it, and if not for the emphasis on Kurama's part he would have. Hello there, youngster. Tune in. I realize that you likely simply need to hurl this to the side and just drop it. However, I figured I would essentially explain why you were distant from everyone else and why I have sent you to another aspect. For one thing, while yes I had my covert operative organization to keep up, I might have carried you with me or even made an appearance at Konoha one time each month, but I'm embarrassed to let you know that in view of my indecencies the main choice could never have worked out, as a child ought to never be gotten the kind of spots I regular. It is likewise explicitly a result of this bad habit that I didn't return by any means, as each time I mulled over everything, there was dependably one more massage parlor around, and I was certain my master would be taking great consideration of you. I see now that I was off base, as my teacher didn't actually have the foggiest idea how solid you were. Still, I can't change the past. The explanation I sent you away is a direct result of another gathering that was ascending that anticipated involving all the Jinchuriki for an as yet unclear arrangement. Because of this I started to look for a method for halting them, and saw as only that in the remnants of Yuzu no Kuni which would permit me to send you to one more aspect to both save the essential countries and allow you a subsequent opportunity, with somebody who ideally isn't as miserable a watchman as I'm. I likewise left you a couple jutsu and a marked duplicate of every one of my books, which I put with your mom and father's jutsus that they put away for you. It's the look with the Uzumaki peak on it, from Jiraiya. Albeit a little happy that he knew about why Jiraiya had done what he did, it didn't make Naruto disdain the man any less. Still, he was grateful for the jutsu and realized that basically the principal book of Jiraiya's should be great. Moving up the parchment and putting it to the side, he did likewise with the look over that had the Uzumaki whirl on it. He then went to the last look over that was a consumed orange variety that made the pre-youngster sweat drop as he believed that perhaps this was a sign from Cammy about how fed up his life is. Still he opened the parchment and when he saw the primary words, quiet tears started to tumble down his face. To my little Otokonoko, means child kid. It torments me such a lot of that neither I nor your dad will show up for you when you grow up yet even now as I'm utilizing an extraordinary family jutsu to compose this with my thinking as I kick the bucket, I realize that you will become incredible very much like your dad and I did before you. We have left you all that we own and might dare to dream that the town will treat you right. As a previous holder anyway I feel somewhat unsure as individuals can't see past their own hazed outrage for enough time to see who you genuinely are. In any case, realize that I love you with my entire existence and I will keep on watching down on you from a higher place. Your dad gave his spirit to the Shinigami to save the town thus will not have the option to write in this yet I maintain that you should realize that he cherished you with his entire existence and was anticipating bringing up his child to take care of business we could both be glad for. We have left you various jutsu in addition to other things in an alternate parchment which is given over from faction head to tribe top of the Uzumaki family which you currently are. Farewell my child. From your Oka-san, that is Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze in the event that you didn't as of now have the foggiest idea. P.S. Your dad was the 4th Hokage, Minato Namikaze. P.S.S. Make a point to give me a lot of grandchildren to ruin. Naruto could never again hold it in as he let an unpleasant cry leave his mouth before he kept on bawling his eyes out while ensuring that none of his tears fell on the letters from his Oka-san. As he kept on allowing his tears to fall he didn't see the way to the room opening as he was too caught up in his own misfortune and Kurama detected no malicious goals coming from Kana as she strolled nearer to the blonde. Naruto actually didn't see her until she was basically embracing him and as of now he didn't mind at all its identity as he turned and embraced the individual who had gone into the room as he looked for anything to comfort him in his period of scarcity. Kana felt an electrical jolt shoot up her back as the blonde kid embraced her and it paused for a minute for her to enlist what was happening before she understood exactly the way in which crazy the young man was thus settled to embrace him back to give him the solace he wanted. It was that scene that Lucius strolled in on and he was unable to help the grin that spread across his face before he left to let the two be. He was currently practically 100% sure that he would have a child. Grinning down at the kid in her arms, Kana felt him nod off there before she glanced over to what the kid had been perusing just to acknowledge she didn't see any of it yet by how hard the kid was crying. She got it was a letter from his folks or something almost identical. Putting the looks to the side in the wake of moving them up, she then, at that point, turned and got Naruto before she set him under the covers and wrapped him up. At the point when she saw his grin because of her activities she felt her heart faint and concluded that perhaps she was prepared to have a child, regardless of whether he was at that point 12 years of age. The following morning Naruto awakened to something he had never smelt, and it smelt lovely. Recollecting what had happened before he nodded off he became flushed at how feeble he should have appears before he immediately looked round for his parchments and last recognitions of his family. He found them sitting on a rack and grinned before he terrified as he contemplated whether Kana had the option to understand them. He immediately disposed of that thought anyway as he was certain she would have thrown him out assuming that that was the situation, not understanding what to do from here. The blondie chose to follow his nose as it removed him from the room and down the lobby where he before long came to a kitchen region which was associated with a lounge area where Naruto saw both Lucius and Kana were situated. When the two went to see him he bowed his head so his chest area was opposite to that of his legs before he shouted out, "Arigato for all that you have accomplished for myself and please accept my apologies for being the weight that I was," and, surprisingly, however just Lucius could comprehend what the very kid implied. It was for the most part easy for Kana to comprehend as the two grown-ups got up from the table and shocked Naruto with a family embrace before they gradually dialed down and motioned that he follow them to the eating table where a plate was at that point set up for him. Sitting on that plate was a kind of food that the kid had never seen. Thus normally inquisitive, he asked what it was and figured out that it was a pile of 6 flapjacks with maple syrup. Not long before he could dive in with his hands, he heard a hacking from Kana and saw her gesturing her head at some silver stuff lying close to the plate. Seeing that they should be like chopsticks, he put the 2 silver things in a single hand, yet immediately observed that wasn't working before he heard one more hack, just this time toward Lucius. It appeared to be that the more established male was attempting to tell the blonde the best way to utilize the silver thingies. Thus Naruto gestured his head in understanding prior to giving close consideration as Lucius nailed the food down with the spiky silver thing before he cut the flapjack with the other silver thingy and ate the piece of food that was joined to the spiky silver thing. Presently understanding how he should utilize the unfamiliar article, he started by putting his spiky silver thing into the top flapjack, before leisurely pushing it right down. Before either grown-up could address the kid, he got every one of the hotcakes and forced them on him. While this sickened Kana and made Lucius giggle a little, it both showed that, upheld by the children brevity for his age, that he was seriously malnourished as a youngster, and both conclude that they would manage that rapidly. After that little situation, the gathering of 3 immediately approached getting to know one another better, with Lucius going about as an interpreter, and through this the 2 of them found that they loved cultivating, and Kana would see about getting a couple of plants for the windowsills. It was then that Lucius chose to drop the bomb on Naruto as he inquired, "In any case Naruto, me and Kana have talked it over and we were contemplating whether you might want to turn into our child." A lethal quiet crossed the lounge area as nobody thought for even a second to make some noise during the decision time. Naruto then, at that point, took on a dangerous grin as Lucius moaned, as he probably aware was coming, "All right." Yet again Lucius then dropped out of his seat as he attempted energetically to sort out what had simply happened, exclusively to hear a thundering chuckling coming from the kid, while his own significant other attempted to conceal her laughs behind her hand, grinning in triumph anyway. Lucius made some noise as he said, "Definitely, well, we'll see who's giggling when I sign you up for school 1 month from now." Naruto best. This made Naruto quit chuckling altogether as he handled what Lucius had recently said before he shouted out so that the world might hear, "Ee." Meanwhile Lucius' malevolent giggling could be heard behind the scenes. It had been a month since it was concluded that Naruto would be the most current expansion to the best family, and the 3 had developed a lot nearer in that time. Naruto took to the new dialect like a fish to water and could now effectively hold up discussions with Kana, and just experienced difficulty with a couple of words while keeping areas of strength for A. These 2 specifically had developed on one another throughout the past month, as the 2 found they shared a ton. Practically speaking, things like errands around the house worked out easily for the blonde, as he had proactively been doing for his entire life at any rate. Cooking was another expansion to his preferences list anyway, as the 30-year elderly person would frequently ask his assistance in anticipation of supper. The last securing anyway was their choice to get a few blossoms that the 2 would really focus on over the course of the following coming weeks. With Lucius it was a completely separate encounter for the blonde, as opposed to holding through tasks, cooking and cultivating, the 2 reinforced through active work and game. Naruto had learned of many games that were played in this new world and was dazzled with the ideas of the greater part of them, as they never truly had any back in his own reality, other than playing ninja, which sort of lost its motivation once you really became one. Still, the game that had gone over best to the blondie was by a long shot baseball. It helped that it was likewise Lucius' #1 game, and Naruto was quick to figure out how to play so he could join the school group to dazzle his supportive dad. That was something else that's superior in the connection between the 3, as they had gradually moved into calling each other by monikers. Naruto wasn't exactly prepared to call the two grown-ups mom or father yet, and Lucius and Kana regarded that by cooperating with his verbally abusing by giving him one of his own. Lucius was currently known as Kabu in view of his #1 ball club by Naruto. Kana as Unmentionables Chan after their most memorable gathering by Naruto. Also, Naruto as Nerukuin by Kana and Neruchan by Lucius were the epithets picked. The month that the three had been together for demonstrated likewise to be a useful one, as Lucius set the papers they required up to make it official, and not long after marked Naruto up for the beginning of the accompanying term of school, where he would move in for the beginning of the last term. In spite of the fact that Naruto acted melancholy about returning to something almost identical to the foundation from his unique world, he was covertly anticipating meeting kids his own age that didn't get feed data about how he was a beast from their folks. Over the course of the month, Naruto had just at any point momentarily gone over what his experience growing up resembled with his new parents, yet they never constrained him, as they calculated that he would let them know all that with time. But in light of the multitude of new things happening in his life, Naruto's time was contracted when it came to actual preparation. As far as finding out about his new powers, nonetheless, Naruto had gained consistent headway through a game plan with Kurama that made them train with his control over heat during his rest. He had found that with his capacities up until this point he was by all accounts ready to warm anything up, yet when tests about whether he could make fire there was some difficulty. It appeared to be that in spite of the fact that Naruto could make fire by warming the air around to a colossal degree, he didn't have the control to limit it whenever it had been made at this point. He likewise understood that despite the fact that he could make heat, his body was not resistant to it and subsequently would in any case consume. Assuming fire got too close, it appeared to be that if he somehow happened to involve fire in fight, Naruto would need to discover some sort of flame-resistant dress and oversee his own capacities. That then, at that point, all prompts today. Naruto's most memorable day of school. He was simply glad that they didn't wear a uniform like Kabu said he would need to in several years. Naruto, with the assistance of a legitimate sustenance, currently remained at a good level for his age at 5 foot precisely. Naruto presently wore a consumed orange pullover hoodie with dark long sleeves and same plan that was on his stomach over the focal point of his chest in dark. The rear of said pullover was totally canvassed in the Uzumaki family peak, which was in red and dark. For gasp, the pre-youngster wore dark pants that fell on top of his consumed orange speak shoes. It was a decent variety, darn it all. Around his arm was his Hitai that he had kept, not as an indication of his home but rather of the main individual from his previous lifestyle who he would genuinely miss, Irika. He had changed the shade of the dress so it was dark, which made it look like the metal harmony was sewed into his shirt from a good ways. Swinging his sack behind him, he left with Kabu to the vehicle before he got headed to school, saying his farewells subsequent to getting guidance about going to see the standard first. He left the vehicle and started strolling towards the entry of the school. Climbing the steps, he started to stroll through the school while attempting to not feel lost, as this school was a lot greater than the foundation he once went to. Ultimately finding the way to the mains office, he thumped multiple times prior to pausing. 2 or after 3 seconds he was told to come in, and when he opened the entryway he was helped to remember the Hokage's office back in Konoha, as quite a bit of it was comparable on the off chance that not the equivalent. Sitting behind an enormous work area that was arranged in the focal point of the room, he saw a man who appeared as though he was getting on in the years, as he had a head of white hair over his badly crumpled face. Naruto saw a genuine grin cross the man's face as he took a gander at Naruto, and the kid was delighted to see it was nothing similar to the phony one the third had set up around him. "You should be Naruto, what's going on with you?" the elderly person asked in a thoughtful tone. Naruto just shrugged before he answered, "I'm getting along admirably. What might be said about you, elderly person?" The elderly person let out a rowdy snicker as a reaction before he expressed that he was shocked an understudy had the guts to call him that before he asked sympathetic for the kid to call him Mr. Henderson when they were around others, and Naruto concurred previously, preferring the man. Being acquainted with school life by the blissful rule was most certainly a peculiar encounter, as the man provided him with a speedy visit through the school. Toward the finish of the visit, Mr. Henderson took Naruto to the study hall he would be in until the end of this current year of tutoring. Thumping on the entryway, the two were allowed into room 13. Preceding Naruto was acquainted with the class. Class, we have another understudy entering our study hall today, and I anticipate that you should coordinate him into our group with consideration and help him with his learning. Presently, how about you present yourself? At this the standard left the homeroom as Naruto ventured forward. I go by Naruto Uzumaki best, and I will be your colleague for the rest of this current year. Naruto was going to go get a seat to sit at when one of the youngsters back called out, "What might be said about your preferences and other stuff?" It was obvious to Naruto that the youngster would truly not like to find out about him and simply needed however much time off taking care of business that he could get. Still, at the gesture from his new educator, who he saw by a name attracted the upper right-hand corner of the whiteboard, was called Mr. Smith, he continued. He chose to utilize the very design that Kakashi had inspired him to utilize. My preferences comprise of baseball, planting and cooking. I loathe menaces, emotionals and fan young ladies. My leisure activities are cultivating and pulling tricks, and my fantasies for the future are presently obscure. The entire class was shocked by exactly the way in which great his English was, and pondered exactly the way that long he had been learning it. While he didn't look to change, Naruto actually had a compliment to his voice that immediately characterized him as Asian. Presently confronting the errand of attempting to find a seat, Naruto found that the only one accessible was close to a young lady at the back. The young lady had the most obscure blue hair he had at any point seen, and seemed to be around 4 feet 6 inches in level. To Naruto she was radiating an ill-humored vibe because of the way that 1/4 of her eyes were covered by her long hair. She had a lanky constitution about her and looked probably as positive about herself as a turtle was quick. To set these considerations for Naruto, the young lady broke in no stand-down tones, simply a congested dim blue sweater and dim blue jeans. Hearing the ineffectively covered chuckling and expressions of "unfortunate you" irritated Naruto as he strolled towards his seat. Had he not simply said he was against harassing, as yet being the pleasant individual, he found out if it would be okay to take the spot close to her. Just acquiring a slight gesture, he plunked down close to the young lady prior to checking out the class, just to find they had math. God, what a buzzkill. After addition Bristle's account of arid lecturing advancing from the abecedary Naruto absentatively to comedy, a little antic to set off what would be a absolutely amazing fable of the Western Heights inferior aerial prankster. He was activity to save this for a backing day, but he was apathetic, damn it, and bear a laugh, so it was with an ample beam on his face that he took out his buzz and apprenticed a button, the sheet chock full what they were accomplishing as there was a beating on the door, activity over to accessible at the abecedary, never doubtable a thing. As anon as he opened the aperture alone to accept a face abounding of acrylic that beatific the classroom into a annular of laughs, Naruto couldn't accept the assumption had accustomed him to do this, a like activity, so far as to advise him ambience it up before they asked if they could appear in the crazy old accoutrement said article about abating up the academy. But Naruto wasn't absolutely listening. All the action were back put to the accomplishments for Naruto about as he heard an about adorable cackle appear from the bench abutting to him. He couldn't accept it at aboriginal, but assuredly absentatively that he admired the complete and would now accomplish a addiction of activity out of his way to apprehend it again. Class connected to be arid for Naruto, and it wasn't until cafeteria that article notable happened, although Naruto didn't absolutely appetite this affectionate of notable. During cafeteria Naruto had appeared beyond the babe who he sat abutting to in chic actuality, afraid by a accumulation of 3 girls abaft a classroom, deciding to footfall in he absolved over to apprehend the girl's calling, his a backbench associate names as the babe struggled to authority aback her tears. "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" Naruto yelled out in an analytic address as all four girls now affronted to face him. He remembered at atomic two of their faces from Sheik beforehand in the morning in anticipation that the added babe was apparently in a altered Sheik with their year group. It was a red-haired babe who batten up. Were aloof advertence actuality about how awe-inspiring this babe is, Naruto could instantly acquaint that this babe was the baton of the accumulation absentatively to blend with her a bit, and I could accompaniment a actuality by adage you accept no soul, but you don't apprehend me adage things like that do you? Now scram afterwards that the girls were appealing quick to leave as Naruto went over to analysis on the girl. "Are you alright?" he asked with an accent abounding of concern. The girl's anatomy seemed to agitate for a moment, but Naruto aloof anesthetized it off for an ambush of the ablaze afore he listened in for what the babe had to say. "Why?" The simple catechism took Naruto off bouncer as he remembered allurement kabod that aforementioned catechism for agnate affidavit about ages ago, he absentatively to say it the aforementioned way his adoptive ancestor had told him. "I don't absolutely know, all I apperceive is, I see an innocent babe in agitation that needs advice that I am able to provide." The babe aloof looked up at him for a moment afore Naruto absentatively to allege up again. "By the way, you already apperceive my name but I still don't apperceive yours, affliction to acquaint me." At this the babe looked absolutely hesitant, like she'd never done this before. Afterwards a few moments of blackout about she looked up into his eyes as her beard fell abaft her aerial as Naruto blushed at what was until now hidden. Violet eyes now peered up into his abysmal dejected ones as she said, "Violet. Violet Par," she said it in such a quiet articulation that Naruto about didn't apprehend it alike from this far up close. Naruto anon regained himself afore acceptance a massive beam to cantankerous his face afore he batten in a blithesome accent already more. "So afresh Miss Par, how would you like to become my aboriginal friend?" Now it was Violet's about face to bloom as the implications of what he aloof said got beyond to her, but afore she could stop herself she instantly replied with an "okay," abundant to his and her own surprise. Unfortunately for Naruto, that was the alone action for the day as Shikanon started up afresh afore they were all appear for the day. Excepting best up from Academy by Lucius he was anon taken home as he answered questions about his aboriginal day while alienated the actuality that he had already pranked his teacher. When he got home he was anon handed a archive by Lingerie-chan afore she asked him, "So what affectionate of flowers do you want?" Naruto had to anticipate for a brace of abnormal afore he replied to Kana, "Violets." So far, although sometimes boring, Naruto's time at Academy had been great. On his additional day he had active up for baseball and had a back managed to accomplish it into the top aggregation and was now approved while batting aboriginal and fielding at abbreviate stop due to his fast pace. He had also, abundant to his annoyance, become absolutely accepted oral the Academy because of that and his addiction to cull pranks. He had managed to not get bent yet admitting there were a few abutting calls. While he was accepted he didn't absolutely accept any accurate accompany unless you counted Violet, but things amid the two had been a little awe-inspiring any time aback the aboriginal day. Naruto generally anticipation he had got a glimpse of her at a bounding of his baseball amateur but aback he looked afresh to see if he absolutely had, she was consistently never there. It abashed the hell out of Naruto and absolutely didn't advise him any. But he digressed it could accept been worse, he could have acquired fangirls, thankfully for him they all seemed to already be beguiled with addition boy alleged Anthony Ridinger. While he was beholden for this he didn't absolutely get forth with the amber-haired boy as he seemed to backpack an all too accustomed ambience of airs about with him. In agreement of Academy assignment he was advanced accurately and had bent up to the majority of the chic in the ages he had been there. His training with his admiral had additionally progressed, although he would still charge a clothing of some affectionate to accomplish abiding. He didn't bake himself a back application it. He had additionally activate through training that forth with his own blaze antecedent he could additionally allay added sources of blaze if he concentrated adamantine enough. To do this he had amorphous with one of the ambrosial candles that had gone to decay aback. He aboriginal began active with the best ancestors as he would apply on putting the blaze out with his powers. He had afresh been acknowledged in that and had abashed onto scenarios in his mindscape and had progressed abundant to put out a but abounding of blaze in aloof beneath a minute. In agreement of concrete training, he had asserted his adoptive parents to let him get a gym associates at one that was abutting by that he went to for at atomic an hour a day. Mostly he aloof acclimated his time there to run and accumulate fit due to not actuality able to do any of the weights due to actuality too young. At aboriginal this abashed Naruto, but afresh he remembered all the cases of adolescent ninja actuality afflicted by training to adamantine and alike old and accomplished ninja who had never absolutely recovered from accomplished training sessions. Still, Naruto fabricated abiding to accumulate himself in aguil action both for baseball and his ascent appetite to baffle the accepted law that cool heroes weren't allowed. He had appeared beyond it on a acknowledgement arrangement to the library and had been abashed as to why a actuality would sue addition for extenuated his life, alike if they didn't appetite it anymore. Aback he asked Lucius about he was afraid to acquisition the man acting agitable about the subject. The albino alone grew added apprehensive aback he a secular out, with a laugh, a cool hero that looked agnate to his adoptive father. The superhero's name was Frozone and every time Lucius heard it he would avoid slightly. Naruto would charge to do added analysis on it later. Currently about it was a Friday afternoon and he was advancing himself to go to Lucius's best friend's abode for dinner. Some dude alleged Bob, or something. Anyhow he was told the guy had kids of his own so it shouldn't be so bad as connected as they aren't a shore-up pricks. Naruto accomplished his attending by putting on a burnt orange tie that he had been affected to abrasion by Kana. Naruto didn't absolutely get why he had to dress up if they were aloof activity annular to a friend's abode for banquet but absolutely not to altercate with lingerie-chan this one time. She had afterwards all afresh been attractive afterwards his violets while he has been out more. Once he was accessible he absolved and advanced of a mirror in his allowance and took a quick attending at himself and smiled at what he saw. Now cutting a atramentus dress shirt with a burnt orange tie on his torso, he additionally wore atramentus dress pants which were actuality captivated up by a belt as they fell over his able atramentus dress shoes. His beard remained beastly about as not alike Kana seemed to be able to do annihilation with it. Abundant to her acrimony and Naruto's delight, his barbate face additionally helped with that asperous attending and he was abiding he looked absolutely handsome. Hearing the aperture accessible abaft him he affronted to see Lucius there with a beam on his face. Once you're done staring at yourself in the mirror, would you attentive accompany your mother and me in the car? Naruto blushed afore scampering afterwards Lucius while accusatory about how he wasn't attractive at himself in the mirror. This aloof acquired Lucius to beam harder as he could not authority it in. The two accustomed at the car to see Kana already cat and mouse for them with a hardly ticked off attending on her face, deciding not to acrimony the woman any added they bound ran to the car with Lucius unlocking the car and the aperture for his wife. The three now accessible and dressed up assuredly hit the road, on their way to some acquaintance of Lucius's who Naruto had activate out was the best man at his adoptive parents' bells not too connected ago, still not alive abundant about what he was walking into he absently to ask Lucius and Kana about the ancestors they were about to visit. He activate out that they had a babe his age as able-bodied as a 10-year-old son and a babyish boy. He additionally activate out that the mother's aboriginal name was Helen, about the adeptness that afraid him the best came to him aloof as they were affairs into the advanced driveway, their aftermost name was Par. As in Violet Par, no absolutely not, it's aloof accompaniment right? A now adequately afraid Naruto followed his adoptive parents as they went to the advanced aperture of the house. Knocking on the aperture, the three were bound accustomed in by who Naruto estimated to be Helen. It was what happened abutting about that bent anybody by surprise. As anon as the accumulation of four entered the active allowance, it became credible that this was absolutely area Violet Parr lived as he saw her sitting there with her back turned. About it wasn't until Helen alleged for everyone's absorption that the absolute comedy occurred. As anon as Violet affronted her arch to see what her mother was activity on about now, she acquainted a loud bleat of abruptness escape her that admiring everyone's absorption afore she affronted herself absolutely airy as a lamp, and a few added pieces of appliance were befuddled about the abode as the ashamed babe ran off to her allowance in fright. Now anybody was aloof abashed as they wondered what had acquired Violet to act in such a way. That was until absentatively to discharge the beans as he declared in a biting articulation that it was because her drove was here. This aloof acquired anybody to abound added abashed as Naruto grew a slight bloom on his face which abominably was bent by Kana, who aback acquired a alive attending as she gave Naruto a sly smile. That aloof acquired the preteen to bloom harder afore he regained his control. He was a warrior, god damn it. And aftermost he arrested warriors don't blush. This about had the adverse acknowledgment from Kana than he capital as she had to badly try to join her will over amazement as her adoptive son approved to authority his bloom like a able man. Naruto beatific her a quick blaze and acknowledgment god that no one abroad had credible him blush. However, it was not to be for the albino as anybody abroad began to put the dots calm and realized that he was the alone actuality that could possibly be talking about. Helen seemed to accept abundant the aforementioned acknowledgment as Kana as she approved to authority in her own squeals afore she absolved herself to go allocution to Violet about it. Kana anon followed abrogation alone boys in the allowance as Naruto had to choke as the restriction began to get to him. Looking appear the actuality who charged be Bob, he saw the man giving him a able glare, but it was annihilation he hadn't dealt with afore, so the boy befuddled it off. Dumbass move Cardinal 1 Naruto anticipation in his arch as Bob alone seemed to get added pissed that he could do article like that. Attractive to Lucius for advice Naruto activate him on the attic abutting to and Jack aboveboard bedlam abroad as Naruto diaphoresis alone at the three admitting he knew at atomic the babyish was aloof accomplishing it because his adoptive ancestor and were too. They were agape out of it as Kana and Helen came aback 5 acute account afterwards with a actual afraid Violet who had her beard bottom-ward low so that her face was absolutely covered. The two families afresh sat bottom-ward at the banquet table which had been connected for the night as they all alien themselves seeing as Naruto didn't apperceive any of them. As far as Naruto could accumulate they seemed like an alright bunch. At aboriginal seemed a bit abhorrent but Naruto could acquaint the kid was a antic at affection and that acceptable credibility in Naruto's book. Jack abashed Naruto as he could not see how he could be so blessed all the time but chalked it up to the babyish not alive any better. Helen seemed nice abundant by the look she kept giving him and Violet he knew he would accept to be accurate about her. Bob about was a absolutely altered adventure as he seemed to blaze at Naruto for too accomplished account of for a hem on his wife's allotment got him to acquaint himself, as acutely as it sounded. When it came to Violet they absentively aback the too acutely already new anniversary added that she wouldn't charge to acquaint her to him. It was accessible to Naruto that they admired to apperceive added about the kid that the best ancestors had adopted and the credible drove of their daughter/sister, so he absentively to acquaint himself to them the aforementioned way he did to the class. My brand abide of baseball, agronomical and cooking, I animosity bullies, emos and fan girls. My hobbies are agronomical and affairs pranks and my dreams for the approaching are currently unknown. Suffice to say the Parr family, except for Violet, were all afraid at his accurate likes, dislikes and hobbies as they had never heard them afore and they all seemed, altered to what they expected. Dash currently had a big smile beyond his face as he heard the afterwords of the blonde's hobbies. Helen seemed to be absorbed in the boy and looked as if she was now captivation off questions from artifice her lips. Bob was aggravating to accumulate his blaze up while aggravating not to assume a little analytical about the boy his babe allegedly had a drove on. He was declining miserably. And afresh there was Jack who aloof sat there with behemoth's smile on his face as he aerial his mushed up aliment afore throwing it aback assimilate the bowl in advance of him while attempting to applause as the aliment went everywhere. Naruto now was acceptable absolutely afraid as he attempted to abide bistro the banquet able afore him. The close blackout that followed his addition was disconnected by Kana but at the moment Naruto absolutely admired she hadn't. So how did the two of you meet? She asked while comatose appear Violet so Naruto got what she meant alike if it was already obvious. Violet's arch alone seemed to bore added at this as it looked like she capital to dig a aperture and adumbrate in it. If things connected like this a fresh Naruto adeptness accompany her as everyone. Alike Jack seemed to accept their absolute focus set on him. The albino coughed into his duke afore he answered his adoptive mother in a bendable and afraid voice. We sit abutting to anniversary added in class. His impaired acknowledgement aloof acquired anybody to blink olishly at him as Violet aloft her arch for a moment to attending at Naruto afore bound ambuscaded again. Sensing the girl's embarrassment he absentatively to end this bound by cogent them of his aboriginal cafeteria breach at school. It was at cafeteria breach on the aboriginal day. Now that got everybody alert as Naruto looked over and noticed that Violet's arch seemed to be embedding itself in the table. I activate Violet abaft a classroom accepting afraid by three girl. Artlessly I ran up to them and asked them, "What the hell are you doing?" To which their acknowledgement came from a red arch who was acutely the baton of the accumulation who declared, were aloof advertence facts about how awe-inspiring this babe is. I absentatively to blend with her a bit by adage, I could accompaniment facts by adage you accept no soul, but you don't apprehend me adage things like that do you? Afresh I told them to scram. After that I asked if she was alright to which she responded with the catechism of, why? Remembering article Lucius had told me aback I asked a agnate catechism to him aback we aboriginal accommodated I replied by adage, I don't absolutely know, all I apperceive is, I see an innocent babe in agitation that needs advice that I am able to provide. After that Violet aloof looked at me and so I asked for her name which she seemed to alternate afore giving as she looked up at me and for the aboriginal time I saw her accomplished face afore she told me her name. I afresh asked if she would be my acquaintance and she said yes beeline away. When Naruto accomplished he looked up to see a advanced array of affections and reactions. He aboriginal spotted Lucius who he could see was attractive bottom-ward at him with a affectionate pride as audacious tears flowed bottom-ward his face recognizing the actuality that Naruto had taken the man's words to heart. Bob seemed arduous as he anticipation about addition blowing one of his accouchement while managing to attending at atomic a little beholden to Naruto. Both mothers were amazement over what had occurred amid the two as they already started to go through a account of bodies they would allure to the bells causing Naruto to diaphoresis bead already more. Dash seemed beholden to Naruto but was concealing it well, he was afterwards all her little brother. Jack was already a fresh arena which aliment can survive the thrashing the longest. But it was Violet that absolutely bent his absorption as while anybody abroad had been encapsulated by the adventure she charged except affronted Airy and snuck off, deciding to go and acquisition out area absolutely he did the same, afterwards access Airy obviously. Thinking about what he would do whenever he was best afflicted aback in his home in Konoha he absentatively to analysis the roof. Aback he assuredly managed to acquisition a way up he wasn't afraid to see the babe absent in her brilliant gazing as he had been abounding times before. Deciding to accomplish his attendance accepted he laid bottom-ward abutting to her. Her aboriginal acknowledgement was shock as she wondered how her drove had activate her, in a moment of conflict on the babe absentatively to be able for a change as she asked, "How did you acquisition me?" Naruto alone looked at her added a few account in acknowledgement as a apathetic bloom began to kill faction Violet's cheeks. Because this is absolutely what I acclimated to do whenever I acquainted bottom ward or troubled. Brilliant gazing aloof seemed to booty those problems away, he answered as Violet now looked at him in compassionate as that was the exact aforementioned acumen she tended to do this whenever she was bottom ward in the dumps. The affair she didn't get about was the actuality that Naruto, the best blissful actuality she had any time met, the one consistently affairs pranks and lighting up everybody else's day, he could get bottom ward on himself. She couldn't accept it and so she asked him, how does one so blissful and able anytime feel bottom ward on himself? At her catechism Naruto aloof sighed afore answering, we are all animal Violet, and we all accomplish mistakes, it's how we appear aback from these mistakes that actuate our character. I myself use pranks and authoritative others feel bigger in adjustment to feel bigger myself. I adore agronomical and affable for abundant the aforementioned acumen as you adore brilliant gazing, because it distracts me from my past, my Bastille that I will abide to backpack until the day I die. Violet now looked at Naruto in a absolutely new ablaze as she activate that there was so abundant she didn't apperceive about him, yet, she planned to adjust that as she looked on at Naruto as she assuredly realized that no one had it absolute like she had originally thought, anybody had problems and they all had to accord with them. It was on this aforementioned night that she absentively that she would activate ambidextrous with hers. So Lucius, what was up with Violet aback she affronted invisible, was a simple catechism that acquired 2 gasps to complete out in abruptness on the car ride home, now that Naruto had assuredly calmed bottom ward abundant to anticipate appropriately afterwards that, acquaintance at the par's house. He absentively to ask his parents what the accord was with Violet Axis Airy at the alpha of their visit. Of advance Naruto already knew the acumen abafted as he aggregate that she charge except Admiral Agnate to his own. What abashed him about was the actuality that his adoptive parents acted as admitting it was absolutely normal. This led to a cardinal of questions that at the moment, Naruto wasn't able to answer, accoutrement him if he wasn't activity to try and acquisition out however. Stopping the car on the ancillary of the road, Lucius looked over his accept at Naruto and spoke. Naruto, there is a abstruse me and Kana accept been ambuscade for your own protection, about I accept it would be added alarming for you to alone apperceive genitalia of that abstruse and not the accomplished thing. He afresh paused while he looked at Kana for acceptance and afterwards accepting a nod from his wife he connected area he larboard off. Aback we get home we accept article we appetite to appearance you about my accomplished and about the par ancestors in general, seeing that was all he would be accepting for now, the albino alone nodded his arch and Lucius began active home already more, the alone aberration actuality the restriction in the air. Climbing out of the car, Naruto couldn't advise the afraid shiver that ran up his aback as he knew that he would now accept the adeptness he had capital any time aback that additional cruise to the library with Lucius area he had apparent the heroes of the past. As the 3 entered the building, Naruto followed his parents into the active allowance area. Lucius began analytic for a alien in the drawer. Confused by this, Naruto absentively not to allege up as Lucius assuredly activate the one he was attractive for as he affronted about an acicular at the bank on the adverse ancillary of the room. Lucius, I don't thinks that's activity to war. The boy was silenced about as the allowance opened up like what you see in spy movies aback the advance roll goes to get his gun/s, alone instead of guns, Frozone's cool clothing was shown. Awesome, this one chat advance a beam beyond Lucius's face which was bound broadcast by Kana aback she hit him over the head, although a baby smile could be credible on her face as well, walking up to the clothing. Naruto stated. So you were Frozone. No admiration, you consistently got so afraid aback I mentioned him or any added cool heroes of the past. At this Lucius acquired a abashed attending while his wife now took on a rather acicular attending as she approved to a judge if she was appreciative of her son for actuality so observant, or to be affronted at how bad her bedmate was at ambuscade his past. So let me guess, Mr. Parr was Mr. Incredible and his wife Mrs. Parr was Elastigirl. Lucius and Kana now aloof nodded as they wondered how Naruto had ampled that out. Even admitting he has, abounding out a bit, Mr. Parr still holds a resting affinity to his cool hero counterpart. Afterwards all his affectation didn't absolutely awning much. As for Helen, able-bodied, it was her beard appearance that absolutely fabricated it accessible alongside alive for actuality that she did in actuality accept some affectionate of cool powers. His two adoptive parents acquainted their aperture bead as they wondered how a 12-year-old boy could amount out what the apple could not. So anyway, I apperceive Violet has the adeptness to about face airy, but does she accept any added abilities that you apperceive of? And do either Dash or Jack accept Admiral as well? At these two questions, the two assuredly bankrupt out of their amazement and Lucius stepped advanced to acknowledgement them. From what I apperceive, Violet additionally has the adeptness to actualize force fields of her own. Dash can run absolutely fast and Jack's Admiral are unknown. Naruto alone nodded his arch as the two adoptive parents began apprehensive how on Apple he was demography all this in so well, deciding to acquisition out. Kana asked Naruto how he was arresting so able-bodied, to which he replied, that would be because I accept a adeptness of my own. Naruto said this in such a way one would never apprehend he was talking about article as amazing as he was. Kana and Lucius acquainted their aperture bead already added as the chat larboard the boy's mouth. Seeing this, Naruto bound ran off afore his adoptive parents could get a chat in and aloof as bound alternate with a candle from his room. Setting the candle on the arena in the average of the room, Naruto absolved aback a bit afore motioning for Kana and Lucius to absolute their absorption to the candle. Already he saw that they had. He began apperception his adeptness and anon abundant the candle was lit as his adoptive parents gasped in surprise. You can ascendancy fire? Kana asked alone to be abashed as Naruto shook his arch afore he replied. Not blaze but heat. I can ascendancy the Kale faction about me and actualize blaze from this about my own anatomy is not blaze affidavit, so afterwards a clothing of my own I can't use it to its abounding adeptness as currently I do not ambition to die due to incineration. Now comatose their active and compassionate the allowance was abounding with an afraid silence. It was disconnected a few account afterwards by Naruto about as he absolved himself while adage he should get to bed as he had baseball that a budding morning. Afterwards he larboard about the two adults activate themselves conversing over the address of aloof how to go about their adoptive son's abilities. In the end Lucius absentatively it would be best for him to booty Naruto to see Edna mode afterwards Naruto's bold the abutting day to see about accepting a clothing for his boy. Afterwards that he would try his best to advise his new son in any way he could. After all it would be bigger for him to at atomic accept ascendancy over his powers, and a way to anticipate it from harming himself than to accidentally account addition abuse by mistake, were the thoughts active through both Lucius and Kana's minds. Lucius afresh went off to accomplish an arrangement with Edna for the afterward afternoon. The abutting morning, Naruto woke up afterwards one of his training sessions with Kurama with a smile on his face as he was blessed that his new parents knew a little added about him alone and was in an acceptable affection for the bold afterwards on, accepting up and accessible for the day. Naruto anon activate himself at the baseball angle area he swore he saw Violet already afresh but absent her about anon afterwards he spotted her. Now alive she could about face area about he knew that he wasn't seeing things and she absolutely was watching him from the stands. This alone gave him a like-added allurement to do able-bodied as his manly instincts took over as they accepted he appearance off in advance of her. Naruto wasn't the alone one to apprehend the girl's dematerialization act about, as Kana had additionally noticed the babe about face area back her son looked her way. She couldn't advise but cackled to herself afore she sighed wishfully while apprehensive area the old canicule went. Impress he did as Naruto anon activate himself, accepting a lot of fun as he managed to get home alert with the additional time actuality a home run. It was safe to say that Naruto was blessed with his batting and didn't acquiesce that to be alone, as he didn't let a distinct brawl canyon him while fielding at shortstop. After the bold Naruto activate himself analytic the baby accumulation of parents that had appeared to watch their kids' comedy and was blessed to get a glimpse of Violet's flushed cheeks afore she acclimated her admiral already more. It seemed that although she promised to accoutrement her problems from now on, her adventurous animosity for Naruto at Atomic would booty some time. After the bold Naruto was larboard afraid as he activate out about Lucius's plan for the afternoon as they began their car ride out into the surrounding countryside. Eventually the leash accustomed at what Naruto could alone call as a money waster, he could not blanket his arch about why one actuality would charge such a big house. Coming up to the advanced gate, Naruto noticed a video awning appear up with a Aegis bouncer on it. Lucius Bound told the man that they did in actuality accept an arrangement afore they were accustomed in, active up to the abode that was amid on the top of the hill. Naruto was added abashed as he noticed all the absurd things lying about that looked as admitting they had about never been used. Hey, lingerie-chan, why would edition charge so abundant stuff? Naruto's innocent catechism got him a scowl from Kana and a beam from Lucius afore the woman absently to acknowledgement him, admitting in an alarmingly candid articulation that beatific a baby shiver of abhorrence bottom-ward the boy's back. She doesn't charge it Narukuan, she aloof has it because she can basically, now bouncing her easily about in an affronted fashion. Still, if I had all that money I would apparently do the aforementioned thing, and maybe alike account a bigger husband. She connected while accepting a bold smile at the end while Lucius effective his affection in ape-shaking while about abolition the car. And who would this, better husband, be? Lucius asked in an affronted articulation while demography both easily off the caster to use as citation marks to added appearance his point. Kana aloof looked out the ancillary window for a additional as she took on a hardly ambitious look. I don't know, I consistently anticipation that cool hero by the name of Frozone was appealing hot, she declared while axis her arch aback appear Lucius and closing in on him. Yeah, I heard he was a appealing amazing guy, Lucius replied as he started to angular appear his wife. It was at this point that Naruto became pissed at the actuality that the two were absolutely blank, the actuality that he was still in their attendance and accustomed to absolutely angry beam to booty anatomy on his face afore he focused his Kalefaction abilities on the car's advanced tires, causing them to abrade aback and the two adults to affray active with one another. The boy took ascendancy of his amusement aback. He accomplished a afterlife blaze from both the adults in advance of him as he bound fabricated his way out of the anchored car and ran appear the advanced aperture of the mansion. Maybe he shouldn't accept done that.